Welcome to the Pen Leader Podcast, where strategic leaders get straight to the topics, strengthening our awareness and sharpening our minds. The Pen Leader Podcast is produced by Roar, a production division of Mays & Associates Ltd. Find out more at www.maysassociatesltd.com. Now here is your award-winning host, Dr. Shanda Gore.
And welcome to the Pen Leader Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about from a business card to podcast. And I am so glad to have with me Miss Kim Newlove, who is an Ohio pharmacist, author, voice actor, podcast host, and communication consultant who believes in the transformative power of well-communicated messages. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Pharmacy from the University of Toledo in 2001 and has more than 2 decades of pharmacy experience, including hospital, community, compounding, and behavioral health. Kim is the founder of the Pharmacist Voice, LLC, and the creator of the Pharmacist Voice podcast, which explores pharmacy topics and careers. Drawing on her healthcare and communication expertise, she helps professionals use podcasting, audiobooks, and spoken communication to build trust, expand their influence, and stand out. She describes a podcast as a, quote, a business card that talks because it allows people to demonstrate their expertise and personality through the power of audio. Kim lives with her family in Perrysburg, Ohio, so she is an Ohio native. She's also a caregiver for her adult son with autism and hosts the Perrysburg podcast for all those Perrysburg folks out there, and a community-focused show about what's going on in Perrysburg and why people like to live there. So without further ado, welcome, Kim.
Thanks, Dr. Gore. It's good to be here.
Excellent. So we'll get right into it because I think there's a number of podcasts that are out there. And I get this question a lot, like, why should I do a podcast? Why should I even be a guest on a podcast? What's this mean if I do a podcast? So this business card that talks, what do you mean by that? And why should leaders think about podcasting in this way?
If you think about it, a business card's just a piece of paper, right? It tells people who you are, but a podcast shows them. It's a way to, like you said in the intro, it's a way to communicate your expertise and your personality in audio.
I know you've written books about this, true, right?
1 book so far.
All right. And what are you saying about that podcast and how to go about doing it?
It all starts with why. Yeah. I have a recipe for it. I started podcasting using a coach, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting. And one of the first things that he said that really resonated with me was that a podcast is a recipe, not a statue, meaning you can change it. I'm a pharmacist. Pharmacists use recipes. So that really resonated. The way that I teach podcasting is also a recipe. And in my book, I have 12 parts. It's like a 12-ingredient recipe. Yeah, that's how I do it.
So the biggest leadership benefits of having a podcast, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit about that business card component, even for someone who isn't trying to become a full-time content creator, what are those benefits and what do you see on the other side of that? Because you've worked with individuals to create podcasts. You have 2 podcasts. What's that look like? What are the benefits?
Great question. I would say that there's at least 3 things. The top ones that come to mind are the one-on-one connection, that relationship, helping your audience get to know, like, and trust you. The second thing would be trust, building trust. A lot of people want to feel seen and heard and understood, even when they're just listening. So one of the benefits for a business leader is that your audience feels seen, heard, respected, and understood. And also you get to share your expertise and your personality. The combination of empathy and competence really builds trust. So you have the opportunity to build trust. And the last thing I would say is that, well, it has something to do with branding. I like to call it controlling the narrative. Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So if you can control that narrative of who you are and tell people without them trying to figure it out for themselves and maybe getting it wrong, that is really powerful. Controlling that narrative, helping your brand, and setting yourself apart with that brand. I have quite the niche, and you want to have a niche that's an inch wide and a mile deep. So those are some benefits to leaders. And if you don't mind, I would love to tell you that there are some that my coach actually wrote about in his book, Profit from Your Podcast. And I'll just say the top 3 here. He says that benefits of podcasting include being thought of as an expert, whether you feel like one or not. You can keep your brand or the name of your company in front of potential customers, and you can increase sales of products or services. So you can build an audience and market to them.
I have so many individuals who ask, like, what are people reading? What are they watching? And I think that book, especially if individuals are thinking about doing a podcast, and I will say this, I'm 2.5 years into my podcast, and I look at like the downloads. I've got downloads in 69 countries. And I look at that and I feel as a responsibility in 45 states, because I'm still waiting on my last 5 states. But thousands of individuals have listened to the show and then really commented on like how it's helped them, and especially if they're having to pivot, because I talk about it in the Pin Leader Path. But there's a level of also understanding that there's a responsibility. I feel responsible for the content that I put out, and I want to be considered as a thought leader. And I have people who say that, and they're looking to me to give advisement. And I feel there's a responsibility there, and I want to make sure to do the best I can. So I love the fact that it's your business card, as well as it's saying a lot about how you can really set up and understand about, like, this is my business, this is what I do.
Well, instead of giving them a piece of paper, what you're doing is you're getting your voice in their head, telling them a story, and giving them a reason to connect with you.
Mm-hmm.
So powerful.
So you teach that 6-step process for creating a podcast that works like a business card. Can you walk through those 6 steps?
Yes, I can. Thank you for the question, but I've got to give some backstory. I created this kind of by accident, because what I had done was pitched the American Pharmacists Association and the Ohio Pharmacists Association to let me talk about using a podcast as a business card so that pharmacists could use that idea. And I kind of got the idea to use a podcast as a business card from my publisher for my book. She uses books as business cards. Her name is Dr. Janan Sarwar, and she is wonderful. But step 1 is define your niche. Step 2 is compare your business or organization to a competitor. Step 3, apply your competitive advantage to a podcast, meaning brainstorm how podcasting can help your business or organization stand out. Step 4, analyze your audience's pain points and feedback and develop 5 podcast episodes that offer solutions using your area of expertise. Step 5, develop a timeline for your list of 5 episodes and program those dates for recording and publishing, 2 different things, recording and publishing, into your calendar. And finally, step 6, create your vision for podcasting success so you can recognize when you have achieved your goal or goals for podcasting. And that, in a nutshell, is the 6 steps. And I did a podcast episode. It's episode 317 of the Pharmacist's Voice podcast, where I actually apply an example from a friend's website to this example. So I made a fictitious podcast. And if you want to hear about that, so you can hear how the steps are applied, that's episode 317 of the Pharmacist's Voice podcast.
That's excellent. And let me just say this. You do a great job of repeating that so people can hear it. I can't say enough how important it is when messages are repeated and then they sink in. It takes pressure off of memorizing everything. So I definitely see that as a very positive thing that you're doing. People can go and look for that particular episode and can be able to find it. Let's talk a little bit more about step 6. What are the goals? The success and how you define it is going to be different for everyone. It may be success if you have, perhaps it's a client who listens and actually finds the fact that they're like, oh, that was a good point, and they apply it. I count that as a success. If I've got that one listener who can take something back and then apply it, I'm like, okay, this has made all the difference. And all I did was listen for 20, 25 minutes. How do you define success for yourself? And then again, how do you encourage others to evaluate so they're aware of when they've hit their success?
Ooh, 2-part question.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to remember the second part while I'm answering the first.
Yes.
The first part is, so I feel like you're asking me, what are my goals? How do I define success for my own podcast?
Yes.
Well, I have 2. Let's start with the Pharmacist's Voice. The Pharmacist's Voice podcast is my baby. It's my first podcast ever, and I used it as a business tool. I use it for branding, marketing, networking, and building relationships. Branding first. I feel like my podcast is a success because when people talk about Kim Newlove, they think about a pharmacist who's in audio production, a pharmacist who uses her voice professionally to communicate. There's other things that go along with the goals. We've got the marketing. I feel like my podcast is a success because I have marketed audiobooks that I have narrated for other women pharmacist authors. I have marketed my own book that I have written. I've marketed the printed book, the ebook, the audiobook, and I've marketed my online courses and my medical narration services. It's a slam dunk. This podcast has done exactly what I needed it to do for marketing. Networking. A podcast is a great way to network. You get people in the chair across from you and you get to have a conversation. It's a great way to build a relationship. I get all these relationships, and when I'm building the relationship across the table from someone, I also get to tell them what I do. And that's one more person who can advocate for me or recommend me to other people. Networking's powerful. And then building relationships, not just with the people I interview, but also the people that engage with my podcast episodes. They're listening. Sometimes they send me an email and say, that meant something to me. Or, oh, you did a drug pronunciation episode. I need this one pronounced. I'm struggling with this one and I'm kind of embarrassed about it. So don't give me a shout out, things like that.
I like that.
Yeah. I keep things private if you ask me to. Part of building relationships is building an audience, not just podcast listeners, but also on social media. People who now follow the show on YouTube, they follow it on their podcast player, they follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So there's just so many benefits. I benefit so much from having a podcast. And then I'm able to share it on my newsletter too, in my newsletter, my email newsletter. I own that newsletter. I can use it for whatever I want. I'm not bound by the constructs or the laws of YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. I can do with that newsletter what I want. I can market my services. I can share pictures of a recent vacation, and I can share old podcast episodes and new ones as well. The sixth and final part of my construct there, creating a vision for podcasting success so you can recognize when you have achieved your goal.
I think it's others who are sitting down and trying to determine about their awareness on how they know they've reached success. What I find is I work with a lot of high achievers who look at it and are moving the bar, constantly moving the bar of like, okay, I've made that goal and now I need to find another one to reach for, right? It's always a constant door of the next step. I think with podcasting, and I'm just going to say it, not everybody should have, I'm going to say this, not everybody should have a podcast. Not everybody should. I think that you're talking about the benefits of how you can leverage them. But there's been some that, again, it's 15 episodes in and they're out. It's a lot of work. I think that people who do it well, like yourself, they make it look easy. It is not always that easy. And you have to really think about your frequency. And you always have to think about, can I sustain this? And what does sustainable podcasting look like? So I would say for those that are like, I have no ambition to have a podcast. If you're not going to have a podcast, you can seek out on being on a podcast. Doesn't that help too?
Yes, absolutely. You can get out your brand, who you are, what you do, services you offer by being a guest on a podcast. Absolutely. A lot of guests who have been on my Pharmacist Podcasters series on the Pharmacist's Voice podcast have said that they started off as a guest. And that kind of whet their appetite. And they did it so much, they thought, well, I want to be on the other side of the mic. And then they started their own podcast. And some of them have gone to a network and some of them have stayed independent. And it's been really interesting for me to see my previous guests start their own podcast and what they do with it. Do they get a co-host? Do they do solo? Do they do interviews? Do they go to the Pharmacy Podcast Network? It's fascinating, but everybody's got goals, and having a goal of the most downloads possible is not always the best goal. You got to think about, what do you want to say? And what does your audience need to hear from you? And what you talk about is somewhere in between.
Yes, I
So
totally agree.
just saying the right thing can be a goal.
Yes. Again, it's just if you can move the needle with one individual who may not, or even explore an avenue they hadn't thought of or a solution. Because, on this podcast, we have a number of leaders who have either worked through an experience, a challenge, a circumstance, and they've gotten on the other side of it. And now they can tell you, here's how I did it. Here's my roadmap. So they're conveying some really important content that is, if it just can help one culture within an organization, someone not be miserable within a culture, within an organization because someone changed their behavior or they helped or civility or care and communication improved, that's powerful. And perhaps that keeps that employee from leaving. Or perhaps it keeps somebody who's an entrepreneur for the first time and saying, you know what, other people having the same challenge as I am, I should maybe I can keep this up, or maybe I can seek out support. So it can be a very powerful vehicle.
Yes, ma'am, for sure. I actually had a guest on the Perrysburg podcast that brought a really interesting idea to mind. His name's Bill Williams, so William Williams, and he wrote a book based on email forwards that he had gotten over the years. But the point of this is that I found it really interesting that he could take something that anybody could find and he just put it together. He curated it into a book. And podcasting, one of the goals of a podcast could be to curate episodes that could be put into a book someday. You could use your podcast as chapters, and it's narrative therapy almost. It helps you refine your message to talk about a topic on a podcast episode, put it out there, and when you listen back to it, it's okay to cringe because that is totally natural.
Yes.
And you will think about, how could I have said that better? And that's how you get version 2 of that chapter.
I love that. So there are no real mistakes. You just keep learning from where you were and you move forward. I love that. One of the questions I had, because AI is evolving so quickly, what are your thoughts on that? Discussions about AI podcasts out there now.
This is a great question. Very timely because AI you hear about every day. This is going to be a short answer. I see a hierarchy, a 2-tier hierarchy. I see humans at the top of the hierarchy. We are the best at conveying human emotion, real life experiences, personality. There is no substitute for the human voice when it comes to podcasting. That is my personal opinion, and it's a strong one because I believe in it. I think it's possible to have an AI voice putting out content in a podcast. I've heard it myself, but my podcasting coach, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting, often says people will come for the content, but they will stay for the host. When it comes to AI, they will come for the content, but they probably will not stay for the host. Hope I haven't put words in your mouth, Dave Jackson, but I've heard him say things like that so often that that's the thing that sticks in my head. There's a hierarchy. Humans are top tier, and then AI is second tier. And I would say for sure that AI is wonderful for using for tools. So if you need an image created using AI like ChatGPT, I mean, come on, it's fast. There's some really interesting images that come out. I love the recent caricatures that came out of people, especially the Pixar style ones. My husband made one and put it on LinkedIn for an anniversary work post, and it is adorable. So I think AI is a great tool, and it can save you time, money, and frustration. But when it comes to the voice and podcasting, humans are at the top of the food chain.
And I think, too, I talk about that in my book, The Pen Leader Path, where we talk about human identifying and developing and engaging. And I say human first because people ask me, I'm like, are you sure you didn't mean to say AI first? And then because they think I'm doing it in alpha order, but I'm actually doing it in the order of importance. Human leadership, and then the potential for having AI leaders. I've heard radio shows that say it's an all human radio show, human only. And there is a distinction. So your two levels, I think that we're already starting to see. Just know that this is all human content here, and including pictures. I've seen that too, that this is human created. So I can't thank you enough for just having the conversation and understanding how you can use this as a business card, getting people to listen, making sure you put it on your business cards for those that still have business cards, both if they're not electronic, but make sure that you're having those links out there. I can't thank you enough for just really talking through that. And for those that are exploring it, it sounds like you've done a lot of research. Please go out there and do your research before you just launch a podcast. Would you agree with that?
Plan before you launch. Absolutely. I say it in my book. I'll say it here on this podcast.
Thank you so much for that, because just in case they go out and buy all this equipment, I'm like, please know what you're doing. So thank you very much.
You are welcome. Thanks for having me.
And thank you to our listeners who are sharing the show and liking it. We so appreciate you. We'd also like to thank today's sponsor, the Maine Intelligence Network. Come be part of a focused network of entrepreneurs, leaders, executives, and authors committed to sharpening leadership and strategy while scaling ventures with intention. This is a place where practical thinking meets high caliber connection. Check out the Maine at www.mazeassociatesltd.com. And we'd also like to thank Mavalino Custom Home Builders. Thank you for your sponsorship, where they build custom homes with superior quality, value, and integrity. And of course, until next time.
The Pen Leader podcast is hosted by Dr. Shanda Gore and brought to you by Maze & Associates Ltd, creating customized solutions for growth in the areas of leadership development, strategic planning, and culture building. Find out more at www.mazeassociatesltd.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Pen Leader podcast and share with others.